Hello and welcome to this Tales from the Hangar Aviation Rarities episode about the Miles M57 Aerovan and its variants. I've already covered in a previous episode a development of the Aerovan, and that was the Miles M71 Merchantman. You can find a link for this episode in the description.
Now, as a sign that peace is beginning to return, one of the latest designs for civil aviation. Designed by Mr. George Miles, it's called the Aerovan and looks rather like a giant bumblebee. Range 450 miles, payload 1 ton, cruising speed 115 and cheap to operate. Those are some of the claims for this passenger-cum-freight machine. As you see, the Aerovan has a short landing run. It can accommodate 10 passengers in reasonable comfort for comparatively short journeys, or it can take a car or any equally cumbersome and weighty cargo. The takeoff, too, requires only a very short space. No doubt many new types and designs for civil aviation will be forthcoming. Meanwhile, the Aerovan, a sign of the times.
Work on the Aerovan commenced early in 1944, designed as an affordable civil and military freighter, and George Miles believed that such an aircraft would be very capable of operating in and out of rough and difficult airstrips. General across-the-board simplicity and versatility would be its selling points. Miles could see that after the war, civilian operators would need large numbers of economical, short-range and versatile aircraft. A high-wing configuration was selected for the aircraft and powered by a pair of Blackburn Cirrus major piston engines. For easy loading, the entire rear section was a door. The prototype Golf Alpha Golf Oscar Zulu was constructed at Miles Woodley factory in Berkshire, England. On the 26th of January 1945, its first flight was piloted by Tommy Rose. The performance of the prototype was good, being comfortable and relatively easy to fly. It was also capable of lifting payloads in excess of its own weight. The test flight results were submitted to the Air Ministry as the company prepared to put the Aerovan into immediate production to help the war effort. However, Miles' work was not met with approval, and the company was basically, and in plain English, bollocks for building the aircraft without authorisation. So work on the project was suspended on the Ministry's orders. Work on the Aerovan was eventually cleared and resumed shortly after VE Day in Europe. The demand for the aircraft amongst civilian customers at this time was very great, and Miles was not able to keep up with the rate of orders coming in. The Aerovan was plastic bonded plywood construction with some spruce and metal parts. The standard Aerovan was powered by a pair of Blackburn Cirrus major piston engines. Alternative engines included the de Havilland Gypsy Major and the Lycoming 0435s. On these aircraft, enlarged fins and rudders were fitted to cope with the increased rate of climb and speed performance. The production model of the Aerovan features some changes from the prototype, including an 8-inch stretch of the fuselage and the use of porthole windows rather than rectangular ones. Production of the Aerovan really got underway during 1946. The majority of aircraft sold were to civilian operators at home and abroad. The military customers were Israel and New Zealand, who would use a couple for fertiliser spreading and aeromagnetic surveys. A licence was looked at one point for building aircraft in France, but that never materialised. Modified variants included the Hurel de Bras Mars HDM 105. This was fitted with a high aspect ratio wing with a span of 75 foot and 4 inches. This went on to influence the design of another favourite of mine, the short Skyvan. In the end, it had a similar performance to other Aerovans, so the aircraft was dismantled in June 1958. The prototype Golf Alpha Golf Oscar Zulu, which was later designated the Mark I, was later fitted with a 5/6 scale replica of the Armstrong Sydney Mamba turboprop nacelles for the Miles Marathon. It was also outfitted with ailerons in line with the standard flaps. The Miles M68 with detachable cargo pod was another version, and I will cover this aircraft more shortly. Even prior to the Aerovan entering quantity production, Miles had ambitions to produce multiple derivatives of the type. One such design was in the observation role to be operated by a 4-man crew, featuring a large glazed canopy and a glazed rear fuselage section. Work was also undertaken on a flying boat derivative that would have a single-step hull, keeping the rear freight door above the waterline, with the assistance of 2 stabilising floats carried on outriggers set on either side of the hull. Some of the aircraft were also used as illuminated advertising hoardings. Right, let's go into the basic versions of the Aerovan. Aerovan 1. First prototype Golf Alpha Golf Oscar Zulu was the short fuselage prototype and had 4 square windows. Like the Aerovan Marks 2, 3 and 4, it was powered by two 150 Blackburn Cirrus Major 3 piston engines. Aerovan 2, second prototype Golf Alpha Golf Whiskey Oscar, had a low empty weight of 410 pounds and an 18-inch longer fuselage with 5 round windows. The outer fin balance was also modified. Aerovan 3, essentially identical to the Mark II, and 7 were built. Aerovan 4, a Mark III with detailed improvements. The main production variant distinguished by 4 circular windows, and 43 were built. Including one originally built as a Mark III, 2 were later converted into Mark Vs and the HDM 105. 3 further machines were built, 1 going to Iraq, 2 to the Royal New Zealand Air Force, and they were later sold on the civilian market. Aerovan 5, powered by two 145 horsepower de Havilland Gypsy Major 10 piston engines, 1 built. Aerovan 6, powered by two 195 horsepower Avolo Coming 0435A piston engines, 1 built with enlarged outer fins taken from the scrapped Miles M68. Specifications for the Aerovan Marks 2, 3 and 4. Crew of 2, capacity of 10 passengers, a length of 36 foot, wingspan of 50 foot and a height of 13 foot 6 inches. Had an empty weight of 3,000 pounds, a gross weight of 5,800 pounds. Power plant's 2 Blackburn Cirrus Major 2A 4-cylinder air-cooled inverted inline piston engines with 150 horsepower each. Propellers, 2-bladed Ferry fixed-pitch propellers, maximum speed of 110 knots, cruising speed of 97 knots, landing speed of 35 knots, a range of 400 miles, service ceiling of 13,250 foot, and the rate of climb was 620 foot per minute. The inventive Miles M68, unofficially known as a boxcar, generated considerable excitement at its launch in 1947 because of its novel approach to air freight. The key idea was to pack freight into a wheel container or air trailer that could be towed on the road, but became part of the aircraft's freight fuselage for air transport. Around the same time, the Miles M71 Merchantman was also being developed. That was basically a new but scaled up larger version of the M68. The span and length of the M68 were the same as those of the Aerovan. The M68 differed, having 4 rather than 2 engines, the 90 horsepower Blackburn Cirrus Minor 2. The container was 10 foot by 4 foot 6 inches, and it could carry 1,600 pounds of freight. The fixed undercarriage was redesigned. There was also changes to the cabin, which was less rounded and less glazing than the Aerovan. It was operated by a crew of 2, a length of 36 foot, a wingspan of 50 foot. Its power plant was 4 90 horsepower Blackburn Cirrus Minor 2 4-cylinder air-cooled engines. Its performance and maximum speed was 120 knots, cruising speed was 110 knots, and its range of 400 miles with a full payload of 1,600 pounds. Only one M68 Golf Alpha Juliet Mike was built. It flew for the first time on the 22nd of August 1947 and appeared at the SBAC show in Radlett in September of that year. But by the end of 1947, the Aerovan and Variants programme was terminated as a consequence of Miles' bankruptcy. A great shame it could not continue on, as I think it would have done well for many years. Sadly, out of the 48 aircraft built, not one whole aircraft remains today. I hope you enjoyed that, and thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, like, share or subscribe, as it's all greatly appreciated, and for now, goodbye.